Greetings, everyone. My name is Beth Weiner, and I am a candidate for the Master of Arts in Leadership Development at Chapman University. As I narrate my unique experience to you over the next few minutes, I intend to share the most important lesson I learned in the MLD program, which, to me, is a new understanding of what it means to care and be committed to reflective practice. Prior to starting my journey through the MLD program, I wondered if a hospice music therapist, with some considerably uneventful leadership experiences from college under my belt, would fit into a program dedicated to cultivating leadership. Nonetheless, my extremely eager self was convinced to join the program by a fellow music therapy colleague, Andrea Chatler, over brunch. I've certainly always been described as eager to help others with their problems, eager to create new things, and eager to work towards goals I believed in. And while I cared about many things so strongly before I came into this program, I did not yet have the perspectives I do today to adequately approach issues and effectively facilitate meaningful change. I've had the privilege of working in a very creative healthcare field, and the various settings I've worked in are often accompanied with difficult and complex situations, like supporting families who have experienced trauma and working with individuals at end of life. Though it always seemed very intuitive and necessary in my work, caring for the caregivers is more of an anomaly in our society. Popular discourse surrounding caregiving is often focused on caregiver burden, isolation, and the poor health effects associated with the role. In many ways, our society traditionally neglects the unique needs of those who provide unpaid care for others, and we fail to acknowledge the benefits of this service to the greater community. I'm sure many of my fellow classmates can recall how often I have voiced my concern about our rapidly aging population, posing the question, who is going to take care of us? It's something that is rarely talked about, and even less often is caregiving portrayed as a positive experience in the media. Over time, the more families I worked with in hospice, the more frustrated I grew learning that local trainings and support groups were in many cases inadequate for the level of support that caregivers need. And I realized I was primed in my own work to assume that caregivers would be burdened rather than evaluate why. I myself lack the capacity to see these issues within caregiving as a dynamic, societal issue. And without conducting this project, I may never have learned that the popular forms of support for caregivers in our community, while certainly important in other ways, are no replacement for critically evaluating why caregivers are marginalized in our society and what role we all play in that. It was essential for me to evaluate my own positionality and contribute towards a culture shift for caregiving. There were several iterations of my Capstone project. I first sought out to understand why existing caregiving supports were not quite cutting it. To do so, I conducted an independent study to explore the various types of training interventions in existing literature. And to be honest, I was naively eager to become an expert on these trainings and create my own, the best one. After a summer of studying the literature, I learned an unfortunate reality surrounding caregiver trainings, which is that they significantly lack in efficacy, and few studies are even tracking their longitudinal effects. In hindsight, I now understand that these trainings couldn't possibly compensate for the unique needs within the caregiving experience. As it came time to decide how to conduct my capstone, I felt at a standstill. It wasn't until I read an excerpt from a book called Forced to Care by Evelyn Nakano Glenn about the emerging care crisis in the United States, which frames informal caregiving for much more than a family obligation that can be remedied by skills training, but a vital service to the community that is severely undervalued and under-recognized. It wasn't until this moment that I realized my initial approach towards this project was a mere band-aid for a systemic issue surrounding how our society regards caregiving, and what an amazing learning moment that was for me. With these new perspectives, I set out to contribute to a new culture surrounding caregiving rooted in critical allyship. I fell in love with my affiliated organization, the Orange Senior Center, early on in the MLD program, through an assignment which tasked me to interview a local leader. I was inspired by all that the executive director, Catherine Conahan, does for seniors in the Orange community. We shared an interest in identifying ways for the Senior Center and the greater community to approach caregiving and develop a new understanding of how caregiving functions in our society. And for that purpose, we decided to create a resource guide for what I coined Caregiver-Affirming Practices, which is structured and informed by leadership development practice through critical self-reflection, applying leadership theories, evaluating existing research, and conceptualizing future action. The resource is specifically tailored towards the Orange Senior Center, but it can be easily adapted to fit other organizations, as well as provide insights on the individual level as well. I titled the entire project A Call to Care, to emphasize the informal caregiving experience as something that our society calls caregivers to do, as well as my own personal response to the call towards leadership and gaining a new understanding of care throughout this entire experience. Throughout the process of creating the resource guide, I drew from the social change model for leadership and the relational leadership model. And the principles from each of those models, as well as a bit of systems thinking and social capital theory, supported the notion that our community as a whole could make a difference for caregiving experiences through day-to-day interactions and a renewed lens of social justice for those who provide caregiving for their loved ones. As I conducted this project, it was my intention to use these principles to shift the narrative of caregiving from one that resembled burden, isolation, and deficit to one that resembled connection, community capacity, and empowerment, and to reiterate that improving caregiving experiences is our collective agenda. It was important to me to provide opportunities in the resource guide for others to evaluate their own bias surrounding caregiving through a personal inventory and appreciative inquiry process, as it was something that was essential for me. The Orange Senior Center and others who use the resource can leverage the conceptualized principles I've included to implement new supportive practices to engage in critical allyship, increase visibility of the caregiving experience, and contribute to an empowered narrative that is more representative of the caregivers in our community. The resource guide encourages creating space to learn about the unique experiences of caregivers and develop a better understanding of how to best support them. Emphasizing how important that is for our entire community was paramount. While my eagerness and passion to help others remains the same, my Capstone journey really taught me that if you want to fully show up for the things you care about, it is essential to evaluate the beliefs you hold about them. In a way, I learned that it was important for me to suspend my eagerness for just long enough to truly evaluate the broader picture. And the way I see it now is if I care about something enough, I owe it my own critical self-reflection to best serve it. As I look back on my amazing experience in the MLD program, I feel a tremendous amount of nostalgia for the learning moments, pushing myself to lean into discomfort, and the many opportunities to learn from professors and my peers who had such rich perspectives to share. It is hard to describe the feeling I have as I realize how far I've come. Reflecting on the takeaways from this program, I'm reminded of a unique analogy about life, which originates from my favorite author, the late Dr. Wayne Dyer, about oranges. It is why my Capstone deliverable is covered with the color orange and pictures of oranges, though it also complements Chapman being in the city of Orange and my collaboration with the Orange Senior Center. Dyer often spoke about this idea of people being like oranges. Dyer would suggest that when you squeeze an orange juice comes out. Not grapefruit juice or apple juice, orange, simply because that's what's inside. Dyer then would invite his audience to consider when life squeezes you, what comes out? Is it joy, anger, passion? What is overflowing within us, unable to be contained even if we tried? I can say that my experience in the MLD program has instilled within me a reservoir of dedication to equity and social justice, to community and civic engagement, and to diversity and inclusion. I personally feel called to care about everything around me with more perspective and intentionality in ways that I didn't even know were possible. I would first like to thank my parents, who have unconditionally supported me every step of the way as a first-generation college student and wholeheartedly rooted for me as I chose a career most people had never heard of. Words cannot express my immense gratitude for my professors, Dr. Whitney McIntyre Miller, Dr. Angel Miles Nash, and Dr. Chris DePedro. To my accountability buddies, Carrie Ann, Celeste, and Marianne, Your support and friendship are undoubtedly woven into each page of this project. I cannot thank you enough. To Catherine Conahan of the Orange Senior Center, thank you for your support and willingness to work with me on this project. The work you do for the entire Orange community is deeply inspiring. To my fellow peers, cheers to you. We did not just succeed in this program, we did it during a pandemic in the face of many unexpected challenges. And lastly, I would like to thank the caregivers of our community, past, present, and future, who are the true backbone of our society. Thank you.